Hello, welcome to Raza Studios, and today we will be discussing the story of Omniscient Reader's protagonist, Kim Dokja. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos on webtoons and manhwa. Enjoy! Overview. Kim Dokja is the protagonist of Omniscient Reader's viewpoint. He is the last reader of the web novel 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, a prophetically calamitous fantasy story written by Tiz 123. Appearance. Kim Dokja has a thin face and fair skin. His hair is slight and dark, he has long eyelashes and dull circles. His face is calm and fresh, albeit fairly tense. There is a checked contrast in his appearance when he grins and when he's passive. As a grown-up, he has a slim physique, being fairly thin before the start of the situation, in spite of the fact that he has become somewhat strong, by raising his strength stat. He is regularly portrayed as looking plain or unappealing by different characters, to such an extent that when he tried to portray himself as Junhyuk, many characters showed signs of doubt, commenting that they thought Junhyuk was handsome. Personality. Kim Dokja was a removed and apprehensive kid because of his set of experiences of misuse and harassment from family and colleagues. He invested a large portion of his energy drenched in books and web novels, keeping away from contact with others. Nonetheless, he actually battled with depression. Kim Dokja is, at his core, is a committed and cherishing man. He gives himself to those he really cares about, venturing to such an extreme as to forfeit his own life for them. Because of this commitment, he is cautious with whom he concedes his profound trust to. He often attempts to safeguard his friends and family from risk by taking their battles onto himself. He is to some degree hesitant with regard to his image and how he's viewed. In early situations, he claimed to be heartless and cutthroat. Over the long haul, he tends towards a picture of an amiable and put-together person, and who consistently has a plan. Truth be told, he will generally prepare for most circumstances dependent on his knowledge of ways of survival. Be that as it may, he frequently has tunnel vision, neglecting to consider outside factors playing into and adjusting his circumstance. He is eminently awful at improvising and sets aside some effort to recover when confronted with mishaps, having minor enthusiastic breakdowns at, especially stunning circumstances. In any case, he is monstrously committed to his objectives, and battles with death on multiple occasions. This converts into infrequent episodes of determination and resolve. Backstory. We don't know much about Dokja's past, only that he has been bullied, but we are also foreshadowed in the manhwa that he has more traumas that haunt him, as seen when we are introduced to a mysterious woman, who offers one of the meteorites to him. We know that he has been reading Ways of Survival since high school till now and that it has helped him through his hardest of times. We also know that he fails his CSAT and wound up at a third-rate college, drawing an unfortunate straw and finding a low-paying position at Monosoft. Through it all, he continually reads the day-by-day updates of the web novel, reliably remarking under every part and supporting the creator while adding his own ideas. At a certain point, he finds SSSSS Grade Endless Regressor, a novel composed by the first more youthful Han Suying, which is a plagiarized version of the Ways of Survival ultimately. As he completes the last part of Ways of Survival, on the transit one day after work, the novel becomes reality, starting the occasions of the manhwa. Plot. At the beginning of the manhwa, we find Dokja in the transit reading his favorite web novel, 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, when he is approached by his coworker, Sangha Yu. Turns out that someone stole her bike, so Sangha has to ride the transit back home instead that evening. She notices Dokja reading something on his phone and asks him about it. Dokja quickly hides his phone and quickly switches the subject and talks about work. As they discuss work, Dokja receives a text from someone named TLS 123, who turns out to be the author of Ways of Survival. They thank Dokja for continuing to read their series and send him a present for being a faithful fan. All of a sudden, the subway comes to a sudden stop and a sudden light arises, revealing some strange creature. The creature is called a Dokkaebi, and it tries to get everyone in the cabin's attention. Realistically, some of the people in the cabin are frustrated and believe that they are in the middle of a movie set, and they begin to yell and complain over the Dokkaebi. Frustrated at the rowdy crowd, it begins to kill some of the people in the cabin. Finally getting their attention, he notifies the crowd that this is real and that no amount of money or begging can get them out of this situation. A sudden screen appears in front of everyone notifying them that they have 30 minutes to kill 1 or more living organisms and that if they fail, they will die. Sangha and other passengers attempt to call the police, but the authorities don't seem to be responding. One of the passengers, Haiwon Sung Lee, tries to take charge and calm down the people. Dokja recognizes him as one of the characters in Ways of Survival. A lot of the passengers believe that this is still a joke, but the Dokkaebi reassures them that it's not, and to prove its point, they reduce the number to 10 minutes and even show them the same situation happening at a high school. During the ruckus, Dokja decides to check the gift that he received from the author and discovers that the author has sent him a complete copy of the Ways of Survival. One man, named Namwoon Kim, decides to break the silence and begins to beat on one of the elderly passengers. Some of the passengers are surprised and try to stop Namwoon, but Namwoon lectures the others and tells them that's it, either kill or be killed, creating a division in ideas in the cabin. Dokja decides to interfere and pushes Namwoon out the way. Dokja seems to be searching for the kid, Lee Gilyoung, he saw earlier and finds him. He asks the boy to borrow his pet and gets everyone in the cabin's attention. He tells them that rules did not specify that they did not have to kill humans, and squishes a grasshopper, completing the mission. The crowd quickly dashes towards Dokja in order to get their hands on a grasshopper, but Dokja throws the container of grasshoppers and has them fight for the grasshoppers. Namwoon is impressed by Dokja and asks him to join up with him, but Dokja refuses. Namwoon shrugs off the refusal and makes his way to his victim to finish them off. However, Dokja jumps in again. This angers Namwoon and he attacks Dokja and tries to kill him as he protects the victim. Namwoon is faster and stronger, but thanks to Dokja's ability, he is able to see and dodge most of Namwoon's attacks. Although Dokja tries his best, he is growing tired and eventually falls to his knees. As Namwoon approaches Dokja to kill him and the elderly passenger, Dokja kills the pregnant grasshopper in his pocket and receives a ton of coins. He invests all of his coins to his stamina and makes it impossible for Namwoon to stab him with his knife. Dokja runs down the clock and eventually, Namwoon dies for not being able to complete the mission. Dokja, Sangha, Hwasung, Gilyoung, and another one of Dokja's co-workers, Mr. Han, are the only survivors in the cabin. The Dokkaebi reappears again and congratulates them for surviving and tells them to select a sponsor, a celestial being that will support them in their journey. After selecting their sponsors, Dokja suggests that they leave the cabin before the person in the other cabin, who killed everyone in his cabin, gets to them. As they run across the bridge, they are stopped by the Dokkaebi again and are given another mission to complete. They are tasked to cross the bridge before the sea monster, the ichthyosaur, can destroy the bridge. Luckily they are able to avoid the ichthyosaur's attack, but the Dokkaebi raises the difficulty of the mission and revives the dead passengers, and has them attack Dokja and his group. While Dokja holds back the zombies, Mr. Han takes Sangha and they join Gilyoung and Hwasung. Dokja uses his bookmark ability to copy Namwoon's fighting ability, but he continues to be overrun by the zombies. It isn't until Ways of Survival's protagonist Yoo Jung-hyuk arrives and cruises through the rows of zombies. Jung-hyuk finds Dokja unpredictable and deems him a threat after Dokja reveals to him that he is a so-called prophet, and after his Sage of Eye does not work on him. Jung-hyuk ends up feeding Dokja to the ichthyosaur and gets rid of him. Dokja finds himself in the belly of the beast and is approached by the Dokkaebi again, but this time he asks him to make a contract with him, promising to get him views and to help his channel become #1 and make him Dokkaebi king. It laughs at his face and tells Dokja that he will have to survive first, as another scenario appears. The scenario tells Dokja to kill and escape the ichthyosaur. Dokja buys some ice stone hog sharp thorns and hammer seahorse mucus to help him survive. After 4 days, Dokkaebi Bihyong returns and is surprised to see that Dokja is still alive. He sees potential in Dokja and decides to enter a contract with Dokja after all. Dokja escapes the sea monster and he makes his way through the city, collecting food and supplies when he discovers Survivor. He takes the Survivor with him and heads underground to the Jeomho station. He comes across a group of people that try to take his food and supplies, but he quickly deals with them and has them take him to their leader. After reaching the group's home base, Dokja is reconnected with his group. As he tries to give his group some food, he is approached by Inho Cheon. Inho attempts to have Dokja join him and lead the group, telling Dokja that he is a hero and that he should share his food with everyone. But Dokja refuses and explains that it is not his job to look after everyone. Dokja returns to his group, but he is quickly bombarded by an angry crowd demanding that he shares his food. Dokja decides to share his food, but under one condition: anyone buying must offer him coins for food. Eventually, the woman he saved, Hyun Jung, recovers and thanks Dokja for saving her. Later that day, Inho returns and buys all of Dokja's food and creates a monopoly on food, and overprices all the food. He blames the idea on Dokja, stating that everyone can thank him for the situation they're in. Hyewon begins to worry now that they have no food, but Dokja confirms that he has a plan and suggests that they eat their food now. Later that night, a Dokkaebi returns and takes everyone's food. It incinerates all the food and gives them a new scenario. In order to get food and supplies, Dokja gathers his team and has them go monster hunting. As they go hunting, Mr. Han gets taken away. Sangha tries to help Mr. Han, but she ends up getting taken away too. Dokja ends up taking Gilyoung with him to save both Mr. Han and Sangha. With Gilyoung's ability, they're able to make it to the monster's hideout. They find Mr. Han and Sangha, but they seem to be guarded by a hooded monster with tentacles. The monster quickly attacks Mr. Han, forcing Dokja to act quickly and cut off the tentacle. Dokja uses his new item Broken Faith, and with the items he purchased while inside the sea monster, he is able to activate the Blade of Faith. He then activates his bookmark ability and uses Hwasong weapon proficiency to quickly defeat the warden. The group is able to get food from the monsters they've beaten, and they also receive a few new items to help them on their journey. Once Dokja and his group return, it seems as if everyone at the station is freaking out about the survival fee they have to pay. With 20 minutes left, everyone is scattering, looking for coins in order to survive. Just on schedule, Inho uses his Insight ability in order to force Dokja to have to share his coins. But Dokja refuses to just give his coins away, and it causes the people in the station to harbor hate towards him, accusing him of being selfish and blaming him for stealing their coins. Inho tells the people that if they kill Dokja, then they will get their coins back. With time running out, the impatient crowd charges at Dokja and tries to kill him. Dokja fights back and calls the crowd idiots and tells them that they can only blame themselves for the situation they're in. He tells them to open their eyes and question how Inho knows how killing people will give you their coins, or why no one in Ino's group has died yet. The crowd begins to understand their mistake and a huge scuffle breaks out. Dokja's group ends up on top and they end up killing Inho and leave the Jeomho station and head to Chungmuro. They come across a ton of monsters on their way to Chungmuro, even coming across some specters that torture them with their past. They beat the monsters and eventually they come across Jihae Lee. Jihae ends up bringing Dokja and his group to her base. On their way, Dokja asks Jihae if Junghyuk is also there, which causes Jihae to pause and take caution as she begins to unsheath her sword. She asks Dokja who he is, to which he responds, a companion of Junghyuk. Jihae still doesn't believe him, so he insists that she asks him herself. While Jihae goes to retrieve Junghyuk, Dokja and his friends look around the station and find the protective spaces, called green zones. They protect you from monsters and any outside attack from scenarios. Just like food, these also seem to be sought for a lot, and there is also a monopoly on these spaces as well. As they venture through the station, Gilyoung races to the bathroom, but unlucky for him, the bathroom is blocked by a green zone, and for unauthorized entrance in the green zone, the host demands for Gilyoung to give his coins. Dokja jumps to Gilyoung's aid and he comes face to face with the landlord of the green zones, Pildu Gong. Dokja agrees to pay, but instead of coins, he tries to offer Pildu information on Junghyuk instead. Although tempting, Pildu declines his offer and demands for Dokja to pay for both him and Gilyoung. When Dokja refuses, Pildu immediately attacks Dokja, and Dokja is saved luckily by Hwasong. Luckily, before a real battle can begin between Dokja's group and Pildu's, Junghyuk arrives and is surprised to see that Dokja is still alive. Dokja tries to convince Junghyuk to help him protect this station and work together, but Junghyuk refuses and states that he has his own plans and that the safety of this station does not concern him. Suddenly everyone in the station receives a new scenario telling them to get a green zone and survive the wave of monster attacks. Dokja and his group attempt to find a green zone for all 5 of them, but they are unable to. Dokja offers his group 2 options and tells them to choose one. They could either find a weak group and take their green zone, or they could take on the monsters and attempt to survive. The group decides to go with the second option, and Dokja conducts a plan. They split into 2 groups, Group 1 containing Hwasong, Sangha, and Hyewon, and the other group containing Dokja and Gilyoung. Their plan is to find hidden green zones that will appear as soon as the scenario begins. As soon as the monsters attack, Group 1 takes the secret green zone closest to the monsters. Hwasong, Sangha, and Hyewon make it to the green zone safely, leaving Dokja and Gilyoung fighting the monsters until the second secret green zone reveals itself. Eventually, they find it, but unlucky for them, Junghyuk is taking up one of the spots. Dokja quickly passes Gilyoung to Junghyuk and is left to face the monsters alone. Junghyuk says his farewell and Gilyoung screams out for Dokja, but Dokja looks back at the 2 and guarantees them that he's not gonna die, as he is overrun by monsters. Before he is eaten by the monsters, Dokja swallows the shard item he got from the specters and is sent to an illusionary space. While there he encounters a past memory with a woman standing over a dead man's body. Thanks to his ability, Dokja is quickly taken from that space to another where he meets a real prophet, Anna Croft, who asks if Dokja is Junghyuk. Their meeting is brief with Dokja confirming that they will meet again later down the line. Dokja then wakes up surrounded by his friends, as they are relieved that he is alive. After resting, Dokja decides that it is time to take down Pildu and begins to construct a plan. Dokja and Hwasung begin the plan by taking on Pildu's men. They bring down their base and destroy all of Pildu's green zones, returning things to how they used to be. They regroup with Sangha, Gilyoung, and Hwin and a new scenario appears in front of everyone. More monsters appear, forcing everyone to either run away or fight back. Dokja tells Hwasung to take one staircase as he takes the other one, and they block the path for everyone else. They put Pildu and the bystanders in a tight spot and trap them as the monsters hurry to their location. Dokja uses his bookmark ability to use insight and turn the crowd's attention to Pildu. With Pildu being one of the strongest, Dokja gets the people to convince Pildu to use his ability in order to fend off the monsters. With no other choice, Pildu and the people fight off the monsters as Dokja and his group watch. As the wave of monsters continues, Pildu grows tired and Dokja uses this in order to force Pildu into a contract with him, offering mana restoration bottles in exchange for Pildu's help for later scenarios. Pildu doesn't want to die and with no other choice, he signs the contract, and essentially becomes Dokja's worker. As Pildu deals with the wave of monsters, Dokja takes Gilyoung, Hwin and Jihye with him to go and help Junghyuk. They reach a room with different movie panels, containing movies like Jurassic Park, Titanic, Hulk, and more. After completing the remaining movie scenario side quest, they reach the last stage and find Junghyuk standing like an idol. Dokja hurries up to Junghyuk's side and slaps the back of his neck and greets Junghyuk. But to his surprise, Junghyuk doesn't seem like himself. It turns out that Junghyuk is being manipulated by the cinema master and Dokja is immediately tossed to the side. Dokja, Hwin, Jihye, and Gilyoung try to take on Junghyuk, but he proves to be a very strong adversary and they have trouble taking him down. While taking him on one-on-one, Dokja is able to hear Junghyuk's thoughts and deciphers that the cinema master is able to take over Junghyuk due to his depressed state. It isn't until Dokja says some encouraging words about Junghyuk and his accomplishment, that Junghyuk is able to snap out of the cinema master's control. He uses this advantage to distract Junghyuk and keep him preoccupied, as he takes down the cinema master. Dokja leaves Jihye with Junghyuk as he recovers and returns to the Chungmoro station and regroup with Sangha and Hwasung. The fourth main scenario begins and they are tasked to choose a leader and capture the flags at the nearby stations. After choosing Dokja as their leader, they suddenly hear motorcycles and are approached by people from another station. Their leader Ilhan Kong offers them an alliance and offers to take them to their base in order to talk out the terms of the alliance. Dokja goes with his group to the Dongdaemun and they quickly discover that Ilhan is lying and that they were trying to ambush them. Dokja and his friend quickly defeat Ilhan and his people and must hurry back because the other half of Ilhan's group conducts an ambush attack at the Chungmoro station. Thanks to Pildu and Dokja's strong group, they are able to quickly defeat the two groups and acquire their flags. Dokja then makes his way to another nearby station and when they get there, they find the station decorated with dead bodies, as three men hurry and disperse, leaving the Myeongdong flag behind. As if they were expecting them. With 3 flags in his possession, Dokja requires the King's Path scenario and he leaves the Chungmoro station in order to require more flags. He leaves Sangha in charge of protecting the Chungmoro station, making her vice representative, and takes Hwasung and Hwin with him. They stop by the Dongmyo station and acquire another flag in the same way he had before, increasing his suspicions of the person behind this. While discussing their suspicions, they are approached by Ilhan's supposed leader and it appears as if this leader knows about ways of survival and Junghyuk. The leader tries to check Dokja's identity but he is unable to, giving Dokja the perfect idea to impersonate Junghyuk. Stunned by his presence, the leader introduces themselves as Sungguk Lee and he offers his services to Dokja. Sungguk reveals that there are people like him called prophets, that have read the ways of survival. Although they haven't read the entirety of the web novel, they are ranked by how far that they have made it through the novel. He also learns that not all the prophets are on the same side, with one side supporting Junghyuk and the other side wanting to rule the world themselves instead of helping Junghyuk. After relaying the information about the prophets to Hwin and Hwasung, Dokja makes a plan to take over their station and take down the prophets. After taking over their base, he has Sungguk and Minsub his workers also and has them sign an oath of death. He then takes Minsub's fugitive's mask and takes his impersonation of Junghyuk to the next level, and uses the mask to complete his impersonation. Sungguk and Minsub bring Dokja to meet the rest of the prophets. To Dokja's surprise, the prophets already have a meteorite containing one of 5 disasters and it immediately hatches, and out erupts the fire dragon, Igneal. A Dokkaebi appears and is surprised that the humans were already able to hatch the meteorite. And although he cannot get rid of the dragon, he changes the term of the scenario in order to make it fair. Just like at the Chugmoro station, they are given safe spaces that protect them from the dragon's attack. Dokja finds out that the disciples knew that he would come and that they hatched the dragon early on purpose. They need to Junghyuk in order to fulfill their prophecy and they are using the dragon to force him to cooperate with them. Due to Dokja's knowledge of ways of survival and Junghyuk, he is able to trick the prophets and he gets them and himself killed by the dragon. Before he died, Dokja acquired the title of the King of No Killing, which allows him the ability to come back to life. While he is dead, Dokja levels his omniscient reader ability again and he is able to see the situation at Chugmoro, in an astral form. His group seems to be losing and the group of prophets nearly kill everyone there. Luckily Dokja accidentally takes over Junghyuk and he kills all of the prophets. Abruptly, Dokja is sent back, as his body is restored and is face to face with the dragon. Dokja has gained the ability to learn one of Junghyuk's moves after taking over his body. He chooses cold resistance, and uses a ton of blue chill pills and attacks the dragon. Although it seems as if Dokja is not going to be able to beat the dragon by himself. Dokja uses the last of his strength to dart his sword at the dragon's heart and he defeats the dragon by freezing it. After beating the dragon, Dokja and the other hurry back to their base to check and see if Sangha and the others are okay. Dokja comes face to face with the head of the prophet and asks if he is an author. The prophet confirms that he is the one that wrote the revelation and reveals that he isn't the real body. The two are approached by Junghyuk and although the author attempts to manipulate Junghyuk, he is killed by Junghyuk and Junghyuk confirms with Dokja that he has redeemed his favor. Dokja explains his plan with his group and confirms that he will be spreading fake web novels in order to get both the prophet and the tyrant king in one place. Before heading out to Gwangwaman, he assigns Hyun with a special assignment and then heads out with Sangha and Gilleong. On their way, they encounter the King of Beauty, Jiwon Min, who attempts to join forces with Dokja's group, however, Dokja refuses. Eventually, a Dokkaebi arrives and begins the king's qualification scenario, and a battle breaks out between the different groups. Dokja and his friends are suddenly attacked by Wangan Chu with the King of Beauty, and they take on Wangan. Wangan and his army have the upper hand until Dokja summons the constellation, Great King Hyungmu, and uses his power to finally defeat Wangan and his army, acquiring his flag. After the fight, Dokja meets up with Minsub and he notifies Dokja that both the Tyrant King and the first disciple are at the National Palace Museum of Korea. Dokja heads in with Gilleong and Sangha and after beating the 3-man dungeon, they enter the room of the North Star, where they find a ton of bloody dead bodies. They are attacked by a few of the people within the room and after defeating them, they are approached by a strange man. Dokja attempts to see his character profile, but he is prevented. Keeping up his suspicions, Dokja is able to decipher that this man is the first prophet and cuts his head off immediately, and finds out that the author's name is Suying Han. Finally, the Tyrant King arrives in the next scenario, King's Qualification, which forces the group to kill each other until the number of qualified kings is 5. While everyone else is fighting, Suying is able to acquire all the jewels. Suying is able to summon the 4-Yin Demon Decapitator, and begins to go on a rampage, cutting down any opponent she sees. But for some reason, the sword isn't cutting anything and is proven to be useless. Suddenly, the number of king candidates rapidly decreases, and out from the sky, crushing the Tyrant King, emerges an angry Junghyuk, as he yells for Dokja. Dokja quickly takes the sword from Suying and her flag and flees as Junghyuk closes in on him. Luckily for Dokja, the number of king candidates reaches 5, and both Dokja and Junghyuk are transported away. For some strange reason, unlike the other kings, Dokja is not transported to the last stage like the rest of the kings. The Dokkaebi ridicules Dokja and states that he missed the important detail, he never occupied the last target station. Luckily for Dokja, Hyun brings Junghyuk's sister, Mia Yu, has brought the Changsan Station flagpole, allowing Dokja to complete the final requirements for the last stage. When Dokja arrives at the last stage, he sees Junghyuk fighting the Maitreya King, with the rest of the kings staying out of the way. Apparently, all the king's stats have been reset, but they are allowed to increase their stats with coins. overall meaning that whoever has the most coins will have an advantage. This trick plays to Dokja's advantage and he is able to blitz Junghyuk and send him flying and win the last stage. The Dokkaebi announces Dokja as the King of Kings and tells him to take his seat on the ruler's throne, but Dokja refuses and this angers the Dokkaebi. Dokja refuses to sit on the throne and also refuses to allow anyone else to sit on the throne. The Dokkaebi orders the other bystanders to stop Dokja and tells them that the throne is up for grabs. A huge fight breaks out between Dokja joined by his friends, with the addition of the King of Beauty and Maitreya's army, and the other bystanders. While the fight goes on, Dokja summons the power of the Big Dipper constellation and uses 4 Yin Demon Decapitator to destroy the throne. Dokja is effectively able to destroy the throne, but he is soon hit with the recoil of using the Big Dipper constellation. Luckily for Dokja, the constellation of the Big Dipper are impressed with his actions and they decide to share his pain. The Dokkaebi is pissed at Dokja and he swears to make Dokja regret his decision and then he teleports him and his friends away to different locations. Dokja is teleported to his job's building, Mino Soft, and he ventures around the building looking for a portable charger and runs into his coworker, Mr. Yun. Mr. Yun brings Dokja back with him to his group and shows him the coin farms that his group is running. They force the bosses and workers to perform a ton of inhumane activities and while Dokja is looking through the cages, he spots Suying, unconscious inside of one of the cages. Dokja asks Mr. Yun to stop these coin farms so that he can get Suying, but Mr. Yun denies his request. With no other choice, Dokja decides to free all the captives and save Suying, who was pretending to be unconscious. Together they take on Mr. Yun and his group and they kill all of them. After defeating Mr. Yun's group and freeing the captives, Suying tries to run away, but Dokja quickly stops her, stating that she owes him and altogether they decide to create a temporary alliance. Suddenly, Dokja senses danger and he quickly grabs her and hides in order to hide from a werewolf in human species. The werewolf turns out to be Dokja's high school bully and he immediately begins to beat on Dokja as soon as he finds him. Werewolf Minwoo cocks back and launches Dokja into a nearby building, leaving Dokja on the ground almost lifeless as Suying covers for him and battles against Minwoo. Dokja is then given the scenario, overcoming trauma, where he is forced to stand up to Minwoo. Dokja spends his coins and increases his strength and speed stats, and quickly blitzes Minwoo and slices his neck. He then slices Minwoo's arm, but Minwoo quickly recovers and regenerates his arm. Dokja bounces back and follows up with a huge punch to the face and sends Minwoo flying. Once Minwoo is on the ground, Dokja jumps on top of him and repeatedly beats on Minwoo. Although Dokja appears to be the one winning the fight, Dokja can still feel himself trembling as he remembers his past again. Minwoo tries to apologize, but Dokja tells him that he should be apologizing to his younger self, and not the person he sees in front of him. Dokja uses one more very powerful punch and sends him flying through buildings, and finally overcomes the trauma of his bully. Dokja doesn't kill Minwoo so Suying asks if she can finish the job. Dokja shrugs and says that she'll regret it. Suying ignores his warning and delivers the finishing blow and ends up receiving a curse. Suddenly Dokja and Suying hear some gunshots and when they go to see what's causing the commotion, they discover a group of women with rifles. Apparently, the ladies are aware of who Dokja is and they have orders from their leader to leave him the meteorite. They notify him that they will take care of the disaster in the east and that they'll leave the rest of the disasters to him. Dokja tries to find out information about the leader, but his ability won't let him. But even without his ability, Dokja is able to decipher who the mysterious person is and it foreshadows that this is another person linked to his past trauma also. Dokja and Suying take turns applying mana to the meteorite and they finally hatch it, and a very tall creature comes out of the meteorite, identified as the Imyantar, Lycaon Isparong. While introducing themselves, Dokja notifies Lycaon that he was the one who destroyed the throne and Lycaon begins to freak out, claiming that what happened in his world will also happen to theirs. Dokja tells him to calm down and that they already got rid of the monster Igneel that destroyed his world and shows him the amulet. Lycaon gets to his knees and shows his respect to Dokja. Afterward, the two go to an empty parking lot to train Dokja in the way of wind. Although Dokja understands the principle of the technique, he cannot apply the knowledge and perform the move. Lycaon notifies Dokja that he doesn't have enough talent and that it's almost hopeless. Dokja tries to get Lycaon to perform the moves to see if he can perform the technique, and he is so surprised by how easy he can perform the move. Suying and Dokja hear another scream for help and find an unconscious Junghyuk. After healing Junghyuk, Junghyuk notifies Dokja that he needs to make his way to the east now and that another disaster is about to be hatched by one of the 10 evils. They make it to the east and arrive at a city overrun with vegetation. They are suddenly attacked and are bombarded with a ton of poisonous arrows. Dokja moves in to intercept the arrows, but they are saved by a golden spider net. That concludes the story of Dokja Kim. If you enjoy action or adventure manhwa, I suggest you give Omniscient Reader a chance. Don't forget to like the video and share it with friends, it helps the channel a lot. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next week.